If you don't know Chuck Israels, I want to invite you to check him out. He's a living legend who thankfully is obviously still with us and performing, composing, and arranging. And he has got an amazing history of playing bass. And he played with some incredible players. Besides running the National Jazz Ensemble, he started it and ran it for many, many years. He has played with George Russell and J.J. Johnson and Benny Goodman, and had even opportunities to play with Billie Holiday and John Coltrane and so on and so forth. He's most known, though, for his work with Bill Evans. That's right, the amazing and godlike Bill Evans. Chuck played with him and, in a sense, had to take Scott LaFaro's place when Scott died unexpectedly and unfortunately. And Chuck knew Scotty and was sad about his loss, of course, the loss of his friend, but he had this opportunity to play with Bill. He goes into a lot of these stories in a book that he has called Bass Notes: Jazz in American Culture, A Personal View. I'll put it on the screen. I'll put a link to it as well because it's a very, very fascinating read. I was absolutely taken away by both the memory of things that happened, and I talk about that in the interview, like I can't believe he remembered all this stuff that he did, and also the breadth of the experiences that he had. His comments on both music and society are sometimes funny, poignant, pointed, and really, as I say, a very fascinating read. So I really want to recommend this book to you. He's also got a great beginning walking bassline book that is very recently out called Bass Foundations: Principles of Jazz Bassline Construction. It's by Share Music. I have a copy of it. It's really good. I talk about that a little bit in the interview too. It's just very logical to me. It's very much sort of follows one thing after another in a really clear way. He is a master of music. He is a master bass player. His touch, his time, his sound, his creative ideas are amongst the best in the history of the music that we have. So I was honored to do this interview with him where we get to talk about lots and lots of things. I think that you'll find it interesting. If nothing else, I just want to encourage you to check out Chuck's music because it is gorgeous and he is, as they say, a master player. So enjoy this interview with Chuck Israels and thanks for watching. Thank you for doing this.
Well, there's a few things that have been on my mind. As a matter of fact, I think what you do is it's really good. If you could avoid asking if you're right, it'd be better. You know what I mean by that?
Yes.
That tick that we have, right? No, don't ask. If you have to ask, you probably shouldn't be saying.
It is a habit I need to break.
Yeah, well, I have some too, and I did one the other day at a performance, and the pianist called me on it, and he was absolutely right. I rather circuitously, but nevertheless, apologized for our lack of preparation. And I had an old friend and mentor, John Garvey, who was the violist in, I don't know, the LaSalle Quartet or one of those the quartet that lived at the University of Illinois in Urbana and was famous for premiering Elliott Carter's music and things like that. He was a brilliant polyglot musician. He always said, don't shake your head or tell the audience when you make a mistake because you insult them in the process. What do you mean, John? Well, they didn't hear it was a mistake. They don't know. And what you're doing is telling them, you fools, you didn't hear how bad we were.
Right, right. Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
And he was absolutely right. And I blew it the other day. And so we have things that we get, our emotional set gets us caught up in that we'd rather switch off, but sometimes it's hard. I sense a lot of common sensibility about things. So we have a considerable amount of shared sensibility about this. And
Yeah.
and we're also fussing around with things the same way. You're fussing around with strings all the time. Some of that I understand, others aspects of it I don't understand. For a long time, I just used spiral chords.
Mhm.
And Red Mitchell asked me at one point, do you like the medium ones or the light ones? I like the medium ones, low action. I don't like them to wiggle so much. I like them to be where I think they'll be. The Weich ones, it's Weich, not Weich, by the way.
Okay, another thing. Okay, I didn't know. I didn't know.
Really, are they're okay. I like them too.
Mhm.
Um, and I can use them, and on most bases, I'm perfectly happy with those. Then I tried obligatos. Okay, some nice things about these. I went. Then I had a friend in Oakland who said, use an obligato G with the. I don't usually want to mix them up, but I tried that. Oh, that's a, with spiral chords. That really works.
Mhm.
Obligato G is not too soft compared. It's really, it takes away some of that metallic zing that the spiral chord G has. It's a little aggressive.
Strident.
Yeah, a little strident.
Yeah.
For a long time I used that. And then Pirastro sends me strings. So I tried the Avas, and they're okay. And they bow pretty good. They're a little dull on my basses. They're just a little bit too muted. And then they sent Perpetuals, and oh, these are kind of like they're like smoother versions of the spiral chords, and they're fine. I can use them happy. What's on these basses now? Back to obligatos, just a set. It's fine. They ring beautifully, and they have a sort of a lush, cushiony sound that I like. And I don't want to fuss too much with them. And once I was rid of gut strings, I never wanted to go back. Although at least the wound gut strings, the ones that are the Pirastros that are covered in ribbons,
Mhm.
at least they last a long time, and
Mhm.
they're pretty good. They don't have all the problems but they also don't sound like like a raw gut string sounds. And is it nice? Yeah, it's nice, but too much trouble for me. I mean, it's nice up to a point. I only have the only recordings I have that are on gut strings are the first two recordings with Bill. I think everything else is spiral chords. I think about something. Here's two more things. I don't know if this is an issue with you, but it's an issue with bass people that
Mm.
I love to address. When we say words in French, in English, most of the time we pronounce them as French words, most of the time. I go to the store and I buy a certain kind of lettuce called endive, but you don't buy a bottle of Merlot or champagne,
Right.
or a croissant at the Luthier is another one. Damn it, it isn't luthier because it's about lutes. It's not about luths. It's a lute
Uh-huh.
fixer. It's a lute
Uh-huh.
maker.
Uh-huh.
So please, no luthiers.
Okay, on the video that is releasing this afternoon, I say luthier. Sorry. Sorry. Luthier, like French.
Yeah, luthier. It's a French
Luthier.
word.
I didn't know it was a French word. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
luthier.
Okay.
Okay, one more.
Yes.
I was at David Gage's many years ago, and he's talking to me about his piezo pickup. It ain't piezo, it's piezo.
Oh.
It's not American as Apple PA.
Is it a where does the word come from? Is it Italian?
I don't know, but it's piezo.
Paizo.
But I have some background in uh, electronic technology, some small.
Ah, okay. Uh-huh.
It's always been a piezoelectric element.
Okay. Got it. Got it. I feel educated in a good way.
Since you're visible with all
Right.
of these things, and people are paying attention, you can influence these things that irritate me.
Yes, yes,
But
bring them on.
I'm a grumpy old man. I'm irritated by stuff that other people let pass. When I go to the grocery store, I say, no, it ain't 15 items or less, it's 15 items or fewer.
I love it. I love it. I am also entering my grumpy, my grumpy age. So I'm simpatico with you, my friend.
So those are just off my chest. I feel way lighter now having having
I will be sure to always use the correct pronunciations and be sure that I know people I learned it from you. People know I learned it from you.
okay.
Are you ever self-conscious on stage or have you been?
Rarely.
Hmm.
I was self-conscious in 1963 when all when I was playing with Bill in at Shelley's Manhole in LA. All the musicians that you knew of in LA were coming in to hear the trio.
Hmm.
Larry Bunker, marvelous, marvelous musician, was playing with us. And I was a kid, and I was, I don't know, I guess I was feeling probably fairly justifiably proud of being there. Uh, and most of the time, just, well, as you read in the book, playing with Bill was easy because he was so strong.
Hmm.
So you weren't really nervous because if you made a mistake, it didn't affect him.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he would catch it. He would just carry the music and you'd catch yourself and fix it right away. So, or it would just pass
Hmm.
and be ignored. But then Ray Brown walked in,
Oh.
and for a couple of minutes, and I wasn't playing; it was between sets. But I do remember being self-conscious and a little concerned about it, and then thinking, well, wait a minute, he didn't come here to criticize me. And the fact is, he was a really nice man and very warm and friendly, and so it wasn't any problem. But I do remember that moment of feeling a little intimidated by the fact that he was there.
Right. Oh my goodness.
But most of the time I don't feel I get concerned. As we start to play, when I have my own band, just the very first thing that happens, there's a little bit of what's this going to sound like? Is it actually going to happen? Are we going to launch into this correctly?
Hmm.
2 or 3 seconds later, that's gone because your consciousness is occupied with other things.
If I can say, there are a couple of absolute gems of quotes in your book, including the three most important parts of music are rhythm, rhythm, and rhythm in that order is absolute gold. I don't know if you came up with that, but it's so good.
Well, I think that may have been John Garvey too.
Uh-huh.
He was an exceptional guy, really brilliant and thoughtful, and understood so much about how music works that I learned to sometimes you learn things that the things you learn well are things you halfway know already, and they just get
Mm.
reinforced. I like my book.
Yes, it's a fascinating reading. Absolutely great. And you also have the walking book too, which is I wanted to tell you to in face to face how great it is. The bass foundations, the walking bass book that you did, right? It's called what's it called? Principles of
Yeah,
Jazz Bass. You don't
it
like it?
it's incomplete to me
Oh,
in that
okay.
it doesn't show because of the publishing issue, licensing issue. It doesn't show you can intuit this, but it takes effort to figure out why those notes are that way. They are that way in relation to a melody. And the bass lines themselves, while they're okay and they have a certain melodic quality about them, in many ways they're just kind of scales that fit. You make the scale go in the right direction and in the right, not to distract too much from the melody, but to be in contrary motion or so unless you have the melody there to understand why those notes are the way they are, it's less than complete. I
Mm-hmm,
don't want
hmm
to apologize and say I don't think it's good. I hope it's good. Uh, I wouldn't have done it without the help of Chuck Schur and Larry Dunlop,
hmm hmm
who transcribed most of those things.
Well, I thought it was really so well laid out. This is part of the kudos I'm sharing. Is just there was a there's a flow, a logic, and also sort of the user experience aspect of it, if that makes sense. In other words, sort of the physically what comes after what, or maybe not physically, but just chronologically, or just the conception of it is very direct and clear, which I really appreciated. There's a lot of good books out there, but it sort of feels like they go off on sort of illogical tangents that are valuable, but I don't see the logic that I see in yours. So I felt that was helpful for a beginner, in particular.
Of course, that's the part of the book that's, yeah, I worked on that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Uh, I do take credit. I do think about those things. I think about them kind of, I don't know, my mind is just grinding away sometimes thinking, how does this work? In order to organize it well for myself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Once I've organized it for myself, I can verbalize that for someone else. I have another book you can't buy. Hal Leonard used to publish and gave up on it because I wasn't famous enough for them to sell enough of them. And that's this guy. And I have it online.
Using the Garriton Jazz and Big Band Library.
Well, Gary Garreton, he asked me to write an arranging book in
Uh,
order that his sounds, there was a CD that came with it that had I wasn't going to write an arranging book, but he said, look, if you write examples, we will take the samples from Finale and massage them closer to not the little kazoo band that my friend Andy Homsey calls it. So I wrote a book. I wrote an arranging book, and I think I like it. I think it's good. It didn't sell and they gave it up. And I have a digital copy of it, but I haven't been able to find anyone who will convert the digital files of the sounds from Adobe Flash, which is now
mm-hmm,
defunct. But I have the book in PDF form. I would gladly sell it if I could sell it with the examples. But its value is to be able to look at the score, push a button, and the score goes, and you actually hear. If you do it this way, it sounds like this. If you do it this way, it sounds like that. Okay, let's talk about amplification. Some guys use amplification in a different way than I would do it, but they make it successful. Ron Carter.
mm-hmm.
Ron Carter is an amplified bass player, and he has this set up with his particular strings that work pretty well. I mean, they're not awful. They're actually pretty good. I've used them a couple of times, and it's loud, but it's not quite too loud. It still retains some attack, some thud at the beginning of the note. He just gets it. He's got pretty good control of it. It's not my preference,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but I can listen to it. It doesn't. I don't think it's horrible at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Ray Brown. who used it a little less, where you felt even more of the physical force of his playing. I mean, you never could escape that. And those are two guys who I think use it successfully. I can't come up with other examples that pop into mind as successful users of it. And in all of my career that people know my playing, it's all of 10 years, basically, 1958 to 68. That's about it. I never used an amplifier. When I brought one into Bill's trio, at one point he said, it's too loud. And everybody balanced differently. Drummers didn't play. I mean, all it is an escalation device in a way. I went to hear Aaron Deal's trio at a lovely auditorium in a neighboring suburb here. Beautiful 500-seat auditorium, absolutely beautiful looking and fine acoustics. 9-foot grand piano. David Wong and Aaron Kimmel, good drummer. They had completely unnecessarily amplified the piano, which spoiled its sound a little. And they amplified David's bass, and that messed it up, because not that it was too loud, but you didn't hear the bass notes coming from what you were looking at. You were looking at David playing here, and the sound was coming all over the place from big speakers. It mislocated the bass sound. It was terribly distracting and absolutely unnecessary. I played in Carnegie Hall with Benny Goodman's sextet in 1961. No amplifier. I played at the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, 2,500 seats approximately, with Bill, no amplifier. I played at the Kennedy, the ORTF hall in Paris on Avenue Kennedy, 2,000 seats, no. I played at Town Hall, 1,000 seats, no amplifier. Do you want your sound in the audience? If you're sitting in the audience, do you want your sound squeezed into wires and then expanded again, compressed and expanded, and or do you want to listen a little bit louder and hear it as it actually is? You could argue for both ways, but I prefer most of the time. I heard Segovia in Carnegie Hall. I was in the nosebleed seats. Nobody put a microphone in front of Segovia.
And to clarify, if I may interrupt, when you're talking about these venues, that these world famous, the most important venues, when you're saying that you didn't use amplification, are you also saying they did not mic you?
No. Yeah. Yes, they didn't mic me.
Right. Understood. Right. No sound reinforcement at all.
None.
Just as this is a slightly petty, I'm asking for a slightly petty reason for somebody that really came after me on Facebook, which is, can you confirm that Ray Brown, and as much as you know about Chris McBride, and Ron Carter did not use an amp in the 50s?
I don't know about Chris.
I mean, yeah, McBride wasn't alive then, but
yeah, no, they didn't use amps.
Right. I mean, they were mic'd in certain circumstances. I know Ray was mic'd.
Yeah.
But I mean, amplifiers, right? They didn't come into real use at all until the late 60s, right? Or early 70s?
Yeah, well, it's a result of rock and roll and electric basses.
Yeah.
And the whole aesthetic where the bass part became dominant. And that had an effect on jazz compositions. To me, it was terribly detrimental to one of my favorite jazz composers. I mean, I didn't mention him, but that I was thinking about Horace Silver and how his music that started out shaped by American standard harmonic forms song forms. When the bass parts began to be prominent in rock music, all of a sudden we have these things where you stand there all night and with a grip on your left hand, and your left hand gets in an unbelievable cramp, and you play the same damn shit over and over and over and over again, while the guys in the front line have a little bit of fun, although I think it's less fun, playing one chord for.
Right.
And Horace's music went that way, and it became, because it was part of the dumbed down aesthetic of the moment, it why did he go there? It made him money.
You said, just to follow up your thought, I think you had said at another point too, that changed the expectation of how the audience expects to hear the bass.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get personal. Do I use an amp? Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes, but so carefully,
Mm-hmm.
so minimally. I use it if you're sure it's there, it's too loud.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be not quite sure that an amp is being used. You have to hear the sound of the bass, and that's tricky. And piezoelectric pickups don't do the job, because as soon as you get them to the point where you can hear them at all, they sound quacky. As far as the manipulation of the sound and the adjusting I do it a little bit. I just try and get it to sound like just a little bit louder. And you
Mm-hmm.
can only make it a little bit louder before it sounds wrong. It seems to me that even if you get the sound quality to be right, to be really just the bass louder, that at a certain point of loudness, it sounds wrong because it's just too loud. The bass doesn't sound that loud, and it sounds funny. You know who Mark Myers is?
I don't
Mark Myers is a guy who writes for the Wall Street Journal, who has this, what does he call that blog? Jazz Wax. And
recognize
he
it.
sent yesterday a video of Woody Herman's band from 1977 with Mark Johnson playing bass.
Mm-hmm.
He played really, really well. And it is terrible sounding.
Oh, no. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amplified beyond all sense of proportion,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got that grainy amplified sound that happens when it turns up loud. And there's a guy up there playing flugelhorn, Joe Lovano playing tenor, and all you hear is the bass part. And of course, it gets away from you, it gets away from your hands. I work at a place here with my octet. I like playing with the octet, and I go in there, and there's a pretty good sound guy who plugs into the line out in my amplifier and puts it into the house system. And I say, Jay, be careful. If you turn that up so that I hear it coming back to me from the house system, it I got no brakes. It's like
Yes.
my foot is on the accelerator, and I'm the
It's broken.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's going
Right.
to keep. It's going to drive into a tree. And
Yeah.
microphones. Chris uses a combination of a DPA mic and some other things, and there's a mic manufacturer here in Portland, Ear Trumpet, that makes a
The Nadine. Yeah.
yeah, the Nadine, which is the actual microphone element is nicely attached and in a beautiful position, and then they have this incredibly heavy brass uh, electronics unit. That's why do they put it in such a big heavy thing? I don't know, but they work well, those
Yeah.
microphones. But there's a limit to how loud you can turn them on, because they're going to catch other things. My friend Peter Axelson makes a microphone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can clip this thing. It's designed to clip in the F hole, which is generally too woofy, but
Mhm.
it's not with this mic. And I tried it the other night at a club. I'm sorry, you can't. It's okay for the sound. Here it is. It's a little tiny thing.
Yeah.
You can use it for the sound system, but it really it's Peter has worked really hard on this, but it still picks up too much of the other sounds to be
Mhm.
practical as a bass mic. So what do I use? I have something called an Ishel. It's a little condenser mic unit that sits on the front of the bass, kept off the bass by a little circle of silicone putty.
Mhm.
So there's a little airspace between the micro. It's actually a microphone, not a contact mic.
Mhm.
If you have a contact mic, what you're hearing is the sound of the wood, just as if you were putting your ear, not even as if you're putting your ear against the wood of the bass, because even that has air
Mhm.
between you and the eardrum. It's
Mhm.
as if you were planting your eardrum against the
Mhm.
bass.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's a different sound and not one that we find familiar or one that balances well with the other acoustic instruments that we're listening to. But in any case, it's distorted sound. I mean, distorted compared to what we normally expect. So it's a little bit better if there's airspace between the surface of the bass and the diaphragm or that is collecting the sound. If it's
Mhm.
actually hearing it through air, it's going to be a little bit more like what we hear when we stand up in the room and play the bass. So, yes, I used it quite successfully in a trio gig on last couple of days ago on Sunday. So, not so.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and again, I kind of the bass is a little quieter than a grand piano.
Right.
A grand piano guy goes on octaves, plays a low note. It's pretty loud, and you can't get the bass to be quite that loud. I don't care if you're Ray Brown or not.
Right.
It's quite that loud. So it doesn't quite match. If you get it just about to that level, it makes it a little easier it balances things easier. So, and people are always saying, we don't hear the bass. We don't hear the, well, you don't hear it like you hear it on a record
Mhm. Mhm.
because we're all recorded up close mic'd on records.
Mhm.
They turn us up. Every time we go into a situation where I walked into a place called the Old Church here in Portland, where it's a place that gets rented for musical performances. When I first went in there, when we first moved here, it was just a church with a piano and an organ and uncomfortable pews that people sat in, and a little bit overly live acoustics. But okay, then I come in one day I forgot what it was I was going to hear. And they have installed at the back this enormous desk of soundboard,
Mhm.
and there's a guy there, and they have speakers up. And not only is the amplification unnecessary, but when you walk in, they've got all that stuff there, so he's got to play music.
Hmm.
So while you're waiting for your fresh cooked meal with fresh ingredients, you're being force fed canned food,
Mm.
as if you had infinite space in your mind to digest musical information. You don't.
Fascinating. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't. I have had some success with that, discussing that with club owners who do the same thing. At least I have gotten them to not play music for 5 or 10 minutes before we play and not in between sets. Probably the only time I ever played in Chicago, and I come in and I rehearse a sextet, and then he opens the doors and turns on music, and it was a situation in which I was playing with that sextet in order to warm up the music I was going to do in Peoria with an orchestra
Hmm.
a day or two later, and I wasn't getting any money for it. It was subsidized by a radio station. It was $500, and $100 each went to the players and nothing to me. And so I asked Wayne to please turn off the music while the people went in. And he said, "My house, my rules."
Mhm.
And I said, "You're absolutely right. Your house, your rules. Bye. I don't have to play. I'm not even getting paid.
Right.
You advertise me, but I'm not going to be here." Well, that got his attention. And I said, "Look, let's talk about it for a minute." And while none of the other arguments held water, I did explain, look, I am doing my best to present music that's in my head, that I have shaped and worked on. And if I am getting, oh, it's good music, Miles Davis or Dizzy Gillespie or Charlie,
Mhm.
I don't know what it was, but whatever it was perfectly nice music.
Mhm.
If I'm listening to that, I'm not listening in my mind, preparing what I need to think about and prepare in order to play well. And
Mhm.
that he understood, and we agreed that he would turn it down to subliminal level. It wasn't completely off, but it was fine.
Right.
But those are important issues, I think,
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
our exchanges. And as I described earlier, when we first started this conversation, I don't always get it right. I screw up too, but it's some things we should be thinking about, seems to me.
Right. So it's in a way we're also asking something of the audience.
Absolutely.
Right.
You're asking them to listen differently,
Mhm.
and they're not used to that. And recordings don't help them.
Your point about using one yourself is well taken, and I use one too when necessary. And this was some of the frustration in the discussion on my videos, and somebody reposted it. Some of my frustration is that I never said don't use one. And in fact, the video I did right before was trying to help some basic ideas about how to use one.
Mhm.
And I said in this particular video that I had sort of learned a lesson from getting in an argument with somebody that I respected, because they said, "Hey, if a leader calls you and demands that you use one, are you going to not take the gig?" So it's like if you need it, if you need to make money and the band leader requires you to have one, you've got to navigate that. You can't just, unless you're whomever, Chris McBride at this point, I guess, or
Yeah, that's
um, but I never wanted to say that we should never have sound reinforcement. The point of my video was to try to present something that I think isn't thought of terribly often these days, very much isn't discussed very much, and also just have a different way to think about playing the instrument itself, which I don't really see discussed or taught. And I think it's really gone by the wayside a bit, unfortunately, as far as the value of the acoustic nature of the instrument. If I can continue to say that I wanted to clarify that I never wanted to also indicate that someone should play where they are in pain and never want to have somebody have a setup that hurts them. I completely am extremely sympathetic to that. And that was not my intention at all, but rather to say, sort of tinker in a sense with your setup and your approach in such a way that you try to get the best sound out of the instrument. That's really all it was. So please, no one think that I ever would want somebody to be hurt.
Oh, of course. And I've had bloody fingers when I haven't played, which is most of the time. I don't, the bass sits in the corner for a month at a time.
Yeah,
And somebody says, come and play, and I'm not ready.
yeah.
All those things that you know of my playing, where I sound good. Uh, those things with those videos with Bill. We were playing every night the same material over and over and over to the point where you were so comfortable you could be really free with it because you really knew all the details that were in place and
Mm,
would mess with them because it was completely secure, and I was playing all the time, so I knew where my fingers were going,
Yeah.
and that doesn't, I mean, that takes regular activity. You have to be
Hmm.
doing that all the time for that kind of security.
Hmm.
And it's been decades since I've been in that kind of shape.
That sounds like your talk about being sort of having this sort of telepathic connection with the rhythms that Bill
Oh
felt.
yes, that
Mhm.
was, I think if I were to try to step out of myself, and we can't be objective about ourselves, that's the definition of subjectivity is what we are. So
Yeah, right.
uh but if I were to guess why it was that I was able to get that job in the first place, it was because of my feeling for the rhythm and spacing and phrasing of things. I
Mhm.
certainly didn't know a lot about harmony. I
Mhm.
certainly didn't play the bass as well as Scotty. I
Mhm.
was okay. And Bill knew me. It was natural that he called because I don't know how other people that he knew. I thought that Teddy Kotick was terrific, by the way, the bass player on his
Mhm.
first record. Really good.
Yeah.
I don't know what, I never asked Bill, why he didn't maintain a relationship with Teddy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Thought he did a wonderful job. But I was especially tuned to Bill's rhythms.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I have certain sense of rhythmic proportion.
You said too how forcefully one plays affects, like you said something about like the attack and the emotional feel, something to that effect.
Yeah, you have to have a certain amount of physical input to communicate the fact that your body's involved.
Mm. And that gets lost with that over amplification too.
Yeah, Dave calls those bass players amp jockeys. Dave Berger.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Oh no, he's an amp jockey,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
riding the amp. And a lot of guys who are very appreciative, like Dennis Irwin was a bass player. He never
Mhm.
used an amp, and of course, he was a monster uh, power bass player. But there is something to be considered in the role of the bass as foundational support for the music most of the time. You really don't want it to cover the surface of the music. You don't want it to detract from the surface of the music. The melody has to be prominent. Then when there's a bass solo, everything should get quiet. You listen, the bass solo shouldn't be as loud as the trumpet solo. 1955, I heard Red Mitchell and Jim Hall play with Hampton Hawes.
Mm.
And I had been playing bass maybe for a year. And I heard that and said, not literally said to myself, but immediately absorbed the vocal quality that was in their playing, the articulation, the legato quality. I played that way from then on. Even as a guitar player before that, I was not a very good guitar player, but I I didn't pick every note. And when I teach bass players, I show them what I do with my left hand. Sometimes I go into some kind of from time to time I get invited to give bass classes or something, and I stand there and I pluck once and I play 15 or 20 notes
Yeah.
and they hear it all. This is what's shaping the music. This just starts it. This is what makes it. This guy is what's making it sound. I guess in a way, amplification can help that. But if your bass doesn't have a good sustain, you can't get it to sustain with an amplifier. It
Mhm.
because of that graininess that happens to the sound
Mhm.
when you turn the amplifier up too much.
Mhm.
So, as a bass player, speed is not my first priority.
Hmm.
Tone and nuance and pitch shading and attack, and articulation. And I mean, this is how I break it down now talking about it, but in fact, I just pick up the bass and do it. But
Right.
those are the things that express my sense of what bass playing means to me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I do it reasonably well with my hands and not so hot with the bow. Anyway,
What are
so
you playing now?
I have a Glaesel, and I also have here uh, a Jonathan Lee Li from Eastman. So anyway, that's what I have at the moment, and I don't have really all that much use for any of them. I go to New York on my birthday on around August 10th, and they have me play
Disney's.
at Dizzy's, and it's a one night stand with strangers, and they can be wonderful musicians, but my standard is from having had the experience of playing in a real ensemble.
Hmm.
And that's what attracted me to bass playing in the first place, was
Hmm.
being the guy in the band. I didn't I don't care about bass solos that, okay, yeah, I like to play a little once in a while and hear myself make up a little story.
Right.
I certainly, I'm not interested in the bass as a solo instrument, although I'm perfectly happy to hear other people do it who do it well. I'm not knocking that at all. It's a fine tool for musical expression. But my musical expressions happens from organizing different musicians on paper.
Hmm. Hmm.
Saying, here's the script, go make the play. That's what got me out of Bill's trio,
Hmm.
was the possibility that I might be able to learn to do that, and
Right.
the necessity of getting away from something that I knew was going downhill.
You return to a couple things, an idea a couple times in the book about confronting practicing and not wanting to confront the frustration of practicing early on. And I thought that was such a lesson for all of us, that you finally sort of faced what you had been avoiding, and it allowed you to grow.
That wasn't until I left Bill. You hear me play, you put on those videos from that British television show, and you hear
Right.
all that beautiful stuff, and I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to say I'm playing well. Uh,
Yeah.
Perfect intonation, no, but pretty good. And
Sure.
certainly the right music for the circumstance.
Hmm.
No practice. I don't remember practicing. I probably practiced some. I can't imagine that I did that without any practice,
Hmm. Hmm.
but it was certainly minimal. Most of it happened on the bandstand. But you could practice on the bandstand, because I remember at the Hickory House with Bill, the first gig we had in New York, playing this, he plays five, his I Got Rhythm tune, and you play 10 or 15 choruses of it. What am I doing? I'm playing the same damn bass line over and over while he does all this beautiful stuff over it. All I'm doing is trying to measure on the bass and be in tune and in time and have a good feel, good sound. And
Hmm.
I'm practice this chorus, you're going to do it again, practice it the third chorus, practice it the fourth chorus. Practicing on the bandstand was a lot of what I did.
Hmm. Hmm.
Conscious,
Right.
aware.
Uh-huh.
That I
Uh-huh.
will give credit myself with, awareness. But practicing at home alone was a lonely process that I didn't like it. Some people can tolerate it, but I don't know anybody who really loves it, because if you're making any progress, you're listening to yourself play badly.
Right. And you said something again, like there's like multiple things in this book that just really stuck with me. One was the frustration is the sensation, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, the frustration is the sense of the friction of progress.
Yeah,
You
the
said something to that
resistance
effect.
you feel when you're making progress.
And that just really resonates with me for some reason. I really needed to hear that. Thank you.
What is music to me? The music has to make me feel more connected with my humanity, with my sense of contact with everyone else.
Mm, hmm, hmm.
And that means and in some ways, it has to sound like me. It has to, it has to have, well, for one thing, it can't be 12-tone music because it has no gravity. And I live in a world that has gravity. So while I find lack of gravity enticing and interesting momentarily, I like to be lifted up. I like the conflict that happens from using serial techniques in my music, so that I kind of pull away from gravity. Every once in a while, I want to go 5-1 and hit the
Hmm.
ground, or I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Uh, so some of Schoenberg's music doesn't, as much as I understand its quality, it doesn't hit my body in the same way.
Mhm.
Music to me has to represent my experience in the world, in this abstract way. So it has to contain all the important things. And if you leave some of them out, it's not that, I don't know. It's, it's just musical problems that you encounter in your,
Right. But also the joy of mystery in a way, or the joy of the
yes,
hunt.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it can be so rewarding, isn't it, when you finally find that answer? I'm sure you've had many examples of that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. And I am fascinated by it. I continue to be fascinated by it, and a lot of sense of how you use structure to provide underpinnings for improvisation to work, and how the percentages are stacked against you when you don't. And why jazz works is not because it's improvised. It's Jazz works is because it's democratically independent within a system of consensual boundaries
Hmm.
that are flexible and they move in certain ways. And
Hmm.
how that all works is a result of cultural history and adaptation that's happened over time. And okay, if we do it this way, it's going to work. Again, I've spent a lot of time, and you can tell from the book that I've spent a lot of time thinking about what makes music durable, what makes it
Hmm.
really work.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we're in an era, and have been for decades now, of music as wallpaper and chewing gum, and I mean, really nothing. And not only in the jazz world and pop world, but in classical world too. There's the whole minimal music stuff where it's really just wallpaper.
Do you think we'll see a pendulum swing back?
I have confidence in humanity,
Hmm.
but when that will happen, I don't know. I thought that what I lived in my period of really fully active life was normal, because that was what was around me.
Hmm.
Historically, it has not been normal.
Hmm.
Historically, this is normal. There was an unusual period from about, well, so it's sort of like 3/4 of the way through the 19th century, and halfway, a little bit past halfway through the 20th, where popular music was written and consumed by educated people. And that is not the circumstance now, but that was most unusual.
I'm just so honored that you would take the time to talk. Thank you so much.
It's been a couple hours of pleasure for me, Matt. I very much enjoy it. And as I said before, I immediately felt a connection with with your point of view and your whole personality about how you what you're thinking about and how you're presenting it, and it made sense to me. And I thought I'm not that much of a modern guy in that I think that these videos are necessarily the best way. I don't think they're the best way. They're not the most efficient way to learn. The most efficient way to learn is the way I learned, the apprenticeship method of being surrounded by people who are more advanced and older and more experienced than you, and being pulled up when you're the one guy in the band that is less prepared than everybody else. That's what makes you good. Nevertheless, I think that what you do is useful, that people appreciate it, and that some people do learn, and it reinforces. Again, if the people are halfway there, if they're not there at all, it's a little hard. But if they're halfway there already, it reinforces what the direction they're going in, and it can be helpful in that way.
And I've learned lots from doing it myself. Lots of people correcting me on things, yourself included, which is great. Which is great. I love it. Sort of diving deeper into certain topics or certain things that I didn't necessarily plan out or set out to explore. It's just broadened things for me. So it's a lot of fun to do, to be honest.
Controllable. So I understand the attraction of a controllable thing. And have you noticed that in your conversation with me, that you haven't once said right?
Yes, I was just about to say right. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Call anytime, really.
That means the world. Thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, Chuck.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye, Matt.
Bye bye.